I prided myself on logic. As a history lecturer at the prestigious University of Ghana, UG, in Accra, my world was built on documented facts and chronological certainty. I dismissed anything that smacked of superstition. Spiritual matters were cultural artifacts to study, not truths to believe. This fiercely rational belief system, the very bedrock of my intellectual life, lasted exactly until the first day of the new semester, when Nneka walked into my lecture hall. It was a Monday morning. I was scanning the attendance sheet when she entered. Nneka, 18 years old, brilliant on paper. But the moment my eyes landed on her, the air grew thick and cold. I felt a terrifying physical lurch, a visceral déjà vu so profound it made me gasp inwardly. Her face, the exact set of her features, the slight tilt of her head. It was a perfect, unnerving mirror image of Amma.
Amma, the missing child whose face had haunted billboards across Accra 8 years earlier. Amma, who vanished without a trace when she was just 10. The resemblance was absolute. It was as if Amma had simply pressed pause and resumed her life, fully grown, right there in my classroom. I tried desperately to attribute the recognition to exhaustion. But then, I asked a complex question about the Ashanti Kingdom. Nneka, the fresh undergraduate, raised her hand. Her answer was flawlessly accurate, delivered with an unsettling maturity. She concluded her analysis by saying, "Ultimately, Professor Adana, it was a matter of kismet. Spiritual destiny always guides the temporal affairs of men." Kismet. I froze. That wasn't a word an 18-year-old used.
I remembered reading in the archived police files that Amma, the 10-year-old, was known for using sophisticated vocabulary, including the word kismet. That small detail was the first crack in my rational shield. My heart was hammering, pounding out a frantic rhythm of disbelief. I was staring at Nneka, trying to calculate the impossibility, when the real shock hit. Standing directly behind her, shimmering like heat rising from the asphalt, was a man, a transparent, ghostly man. It was Professor Obi. Obi, my eccentric, brilliant colleague from philosophy, who had died suddenly and mysteriously just 3 months ago. He was wearing his usual tweed jacket, completely out of place in the humid hall. His spectral eyes locked onto mine, bypassing Nneka completely. Slowly, deliberately, he shook his head. It was a clear, unmistakable gesture. "Stop. Do not look closer. Leave this alone."
My academic training screamed for a logical explanation, but the cold certainty radiating from Obi's translucent form, coupled with the identical face of the missing child, demolished decades of rational thought. Nneka was Amma, somehow impossibly returned, and Professor Obi, the man who spent his life researching the spiritual undercurrents of our history, was here, a ghost, trying to warn me away from her. The mystery of her identity was a temptation I knew I could not resist. The next few days blurred into an obsessive cycle of teaching and research. I spent every spare moment pulling up old newspaper clippings and police reports on the Amansia case. Amma disappeared 8 years ago, aged 10. Nneka was 18. The math defied logic, yet the photograph staring back from the archive was Nneka. The allure of solving this impossible cold case was overpowering.
The warnings from the supernatural realm escalated quickly. Professor Obi's ghost became a regular fixture in my periphery. One afternoon, I was outlining my plan to discreetly contact Amma's original family, comparing the old clippings next to Nneka's enrollment form. I stepped away briefly, and when I returned, the air was thick with ozone. Obi's ghost was standing by the chalkboard. Scrawled across the slate in his distinctive shaky handwriting was a single cryptic word: leave. I stumbled backward, terror gripping me. I tried to rationalize it as stress, but the fear was real. I confided in Dr. Mensah, a colleague, mentioning only the physical resemblance. "Adana, you are overworking yourself," Mensah dismissed gently. "It is just a coincidence." But Nneka kept providing proof. During a discussion about ancient burial rites, she casually mentioned a specific, obscure historical artifact, a small, carved wooden ibis that only Amma's family had owned, and which had been reported stolen the night Amma vanished. How could Nneka, adopted from a distant region, know such an intimate, obscure detail of the Nzaya family? The spiritual warning from Obi was clear, but the academic and human temptation to find the truth was stronger. I had to know. I decided to contact Amma's biological mother, driven by the need for definitive proof, even if it meant stepping into a dangerous supernatural realm. If you want to see what happens when the past refuses to stay buried and a history lecturer decides to confront a terrifying mystery of reincarnation, subscribe to this channel, because this story is only just beginning. My commitment was sealed. I was a detective now.
I met Amma's biological mother, Afua, far from the University of Ghana. Afua was still visibly marked by 8 years of grief. When I presented Nneka's photo, the color drained from Afua's face. "My God," she whispered, her hands trembling. "It is her. It is Amma." But the recognition was immediately followed by crushing denial. "It cannot be. Amma is gone. It is a cruel, sad coincidence." I left knowing I had emotional confirmation, but I needed physical proof that transcended mere resemblance. The missing person file had specified one detail, not visible in photos: a small, irregular burn mark on Amma's right wrist, sustained during a childhood accident. That proof came during a tutorial session with Nneka. She reached across the table, and her sleeve rode up slightly. There, clearly visible above her pulse point, was the distinctive, faint, jagged burn mark.
It was identical to the one described in Amma's file. It was mathematically impossible. That scar belonged to Amma. Nneka was Amma. The physical confirmation hit me like a blow to the chest, leaving me breathless and dizzy. This undeniable proof triggered Professor Obi's most aggressive manifestation yet. That night, when I tried to write down the scar detail, the room went wild. Bookshelves rattled violently, and heavy texts flew off the shelves, narrowly missing my head. I heard urgent, unintelligible whispers right next to my ear, a sound like dry leaves scraping pavement. I fled the office, shaking, knowing Obi was actively trying to scare me off the investigation. Dr. Mensah, my colleague, noticed my paranoia. "Adana, you look like you haven't slept. You are obsessing over this student. You need to pull back," he warned. Yet Nneka's presence brought strange benefits. Her brilliance reflected positively on my department. The rewards were the bait, binding me closer to the danger. The real danger lay with Nneka's current guardians, the wealthy couple who claimed they adopted her recently. They started watching me, parked near the UG gates in their sleek black SUV. When I mentioned Amma's case in a subtle way, they called me. They were polite but firm. "Professor Adana, Nneka has a private life. Please respect that and focus only on her studies." They knew something. They were hiding something about her adoption. If you've ever ignored clear warning signs because the truth was too painful or too unbelievable to accept, hit the like button. I knew I was close to the terrifying truth, and I was too deep to turn back now. The pressure built until it broke during a one-on-one session with Nneka. I intentionally used a specific, intimate detail I had learned from Amma's biological mother, Afua. Afua had mentioned Amma's favorite damaged cloth doll, Kofi. "Sometimes," I said casually, "the simplest objects hold the greatest emotional weight. Imagine a small child, deeply attached to a damaged toy." Nneka froze. Her bright, usually composed eyes went wide and distant. "Kofi," she murmured, her voice momentarily sounding younger. "He wasn't damaged, Professor. He was maimed. The head wasn't just torn, it was ripped off by the dog, but the stuffing was carefully sewn back in place using red thread. Mama Afua always said red thread was strong enough to hold any tragedy together. Red thread, an intimate memory only Amma would possess. Nneka, Who are you? I demanded, the academic pretense completely gone. She instantly recoiled, the present Nneka returning, her face closing off. She looked terrified, retreating behind her sophisticated facade. I don't know what you mean, Professor. I must have read that detail somewhere. She fled the room. I was left alone, reeling from the confirmation. I couldn't deny it anymore. This was a soul, transferred, protected, and hiding in plain sight. I felt Professor Obi's presence materialize behind me, heavier and colder than ever. I turned, tears streaming down my face. Obi, I know the truth. Why are you warning me to leave? Obi's ghost focused all his energy and projected a vision directly into my mind, a horrifying, rapid glimpse of a past. I saw a small, terrified 10-year-old girl, Amma, being cornered by two large, shadowy figures, the Guardians, in a dark room. I saw fear, pain, and then a blinding flash of light, followed by an agonizing sense of separation and transference. The vision suggested foul play, danger, and a desperate, powerful intervention that necessitated the soul transfer. The message was clear. Amma had been in mortal danger, and the reincarnation was an act of salvation. Before I could process the terror of the vision, my phone rang. It was Nneka's guardian. His voice was low and menacing. Professor Adana, we know you are asking questions about Nneka's past. Stop. Now. This is your only warning. Stay away from her private life, or you will regret graduating from this university. Their threat confirmed my deepest suspicion. They were involved in Amma's original disappearance, and they were terrified Nneka was remembering the truth.
Comment where you're watching from and tell us, if a ghost warned you to stop investigating, would you stay or leave? I knew I couldn't stop now. The truth was too terrifying, and Amma was still in danger. I realized I needed to understand the mechanics of the soul transfer if I was going to protect Amma's second chance. My focus shifted to Professor Obi's final research. I enlisted the help of Dr. Mensah, telling him only that Obi's death was suspicious and linked to a major crime. Mensah, convinced I needed a logical explanation to regain my sanity, helped me access Obi's locked office late one night. The office smelled of dust and old paper. Behind a false panel, we discovered a collection of cryptic research notes, metaphysical transference dynamics.
Obi had been meticulously documenting his attempts to reconcile ancient Ghanaian spiritual practices concerning the Kra, soul, with modern quantum theory. Mensah helped me decipher the most critical passages. The notes revealed Obi believed Amma was in immediate mortal danger from her guardians. He had located a young girl named Nneka who had recently died naturally in a distant village. Obi had executed a complex, high-risk ritual to intercept Amma's soul at the moment of her trauma and transfer it into Nneka's recently vacated body. The notes confirmed everything. Nneka was Amma, protected by an impossible act of spiritual science. The discovery put me in immediate danger. As I drove home late that night, the sleek black SUV belonging to Nneka's guardians began tailing me aggressively. On a deserted stretch of road near Lagan, they swerved violently, attempting to run my car off the road. It was an attempt on my life. I screamed, slamming on the brakes. The SUV stopped just ahead, and two shadowy figures started to emerge. I was trapped. Then the air turned ice cold. A surge of energy, visible as a faint blue haze, erupted between my car and the SUV. Professor Obi's ghost materialized fully, not as a subtle shimmer, but as a solid, imposing figure, physically blocking the path. He held them stationary for perhaps 3 seconds, an eternity of spiritual force. The figures in the SUV hesitated, sensing the unnatural interference, panicked, and sped away. Obi's ghost turned, gave me a brief, exhausted nod, and vanished, leaving me shaking but alive. He was actively protecting me.
I was caught between dangerous criminals and a powerful protective spirit.
If you want early access to stories like this and exclusive behind-the-scenes content that explores these spiritual mysteries and the sacrifices made for life, become a channel member. The notes were still incomplete. I needed the final piece of the puzzle, the full record of why Obi chose Nneka's body and who exactly Ama was running from. I suspected Obi had kept a final journal. I slipped back onto the deserted UG campus the next day, guided by intuition. Running my hand along the bottom panel of a heavy filing cabinet in Obi's office, I found a hidden false bottom. Inside was a slim, leather-bound journal, Obi's final testament. I didn't wait to leave. I sat on the dusty floor and ripped it open. The journal confirmed the ritual and the immense spiritual cost to Obi, but the final pages held the full, horrifying truth. Ama had been systematically abused and mortally injured by her own guardians, the same people who claimed Nneka today. Obi, driven by guilt for not intervening sooner, had performed the transfer to give Ama a second chance at life, safe from her abusers. I have given Ama a new name, Nneka, and a new life. She must be protected from the echoes of her past. They must never know the soul survived, Obi's final entry read. My acceptance was complete, replaced by protective rage. The guardians were suspicious because Nneka was exhibiting Ama's traits. They realized their missing victim had somehow returned, and they needed to silence me before the truth became undeniable. I was still reading the final, frantic entries when the door to Obi's office burst open. Nneka's guardian stood there. "Professor Adana, you are proving to be quite obstinate," the man hissed, stepping forward. I clutched the journal to my chest. "You hurt her. You tried to kill Ama." The man lunged towards me, grabbing my arm painfully. I fought him desperately, knowing this was the end of the line. Just as he raised his hand to strike me, the world around us exploded in sound. It was a cacophony, a high-pitched metallic screech mixed with a roar of pure energy. The temperature plummeted instantly, and a violent, unseen force slammed into the guardians. Professor Obi's ghost manifested one last time, not as a shimmer, but as a desperate, focused column of white, static light, burning out his final reserves. He stood between me and the guardians, a spiritual shield. The guardians screamed, terrified by the undeniable supernatural disruption. "Go!" a voice scraped in my mind. I sprinted toward the distant security post, screaming for help, clutching the journal. Behind me, I heard the crash of the SUV door and the sound of the guardians recovering, but Obi's sacrifice had bought me the critical seconds I needed. I reached the security station, collapsing inside the booth, pointing frantically back at the quad. Obi's ghost was gone, his mission fulfilled. He had used his last spiritual breath to ensure Ama's safety and mine. If these stories teach you valuable lessons about life and the sacrifices made for love and protection, please support the channel with a super thanks. The authorities focused entirely on the tangible evidence I provided. They didn't need to hear about the ghost or the soul transfer. The documentation detailing Aman Saya's original abuse, her near-death state, and the physical proof of the scar, all framed within the context of an elaborate identity theft and fraud scheme, was more than enough. Nneka's guardians were swiftly arrested. The charges were severe: kidnapping, aggravated assault, and child endangerment. They had tried to protect their dark secret, but Professor Obi's sacrifice had ensured justice would finally prevail. Several months have passed since that terrifying night. I am still here, teaching history at the University of Ghana, but I am no longer the strictly rational lecturer I once was. I now incorporate the spiritual history of the region, the power of ancient rituals, the belief in ancestral guidance, and the concept of destiny. The experience cracked my rigid academic shell, forcing me to acknowledge that some truths exist beyond archival facts. Nneka, Ama, continues to thrive.
The fraudulent guardianship was dissolved, and Nneka was placed under the care of Amma's biological mother, Afua. Afua didn't need a philosophical explanation. When she looked into Nneka's eyes, she saw her daughter. Amma is safe, flourishing, and continuing her education at UG, no longer haunted by her past, thanks to the sacrifice of a ghost. I often think of Professor Obi. He was not the madman the faculty dismissed. He was a spiritual warrior who understood that fate and past trauma demand resolution, and sometimes the only way to cheat death is to embrace the impossible. He used his immense intellect and his last reserves of life force to perform the ultimate act of selflessness. I realize now that my initial reaction, the need to rationalize Nneka's uncanny resemblance, was the biggest mistake. Spiritual truths often require trusting intuition over pure logic. My rational mind almost cost Nneka her safety and cost me my life. I will never again doubt the power of intuition or the enduring strength of a soul determined to complete its journey. We have another powerful story coming your way about a farmer who finds a mysterious golden artifact in his field and the ancient curse that follows it. Make sure you are subscribed so you don't miss it. Thank you for watching. Where are you watching from?